Hello, everyone. Welcome to Russell's Movie Reviews, and welcome to the 30th episode of the series. It's been a very long time uh, that I've been doing this series. I'm surprised I was able to get 30 episodes in less than a year. Um, so that's very surprising, and hopefully I can reach around 50 by the time it hits year one of the series going on. Um, And if you guys don't know what Russell's Movie Reviews is, well, if you don't, well, it's basically pick a movie from my shelves, one of my two shelves of Blu-rays or DVDs, and I pick a movie, and or my fans from either Instagram or Facebook, if you follow me down in the description below, um, they get the pick. And usually you get a movie that's like really good or one of the best films of all time. But every once in a while you get that one movie that's very garbage and should never no one should ever watch ever and is a sin against film history. Um, but certainly this film is a very good movie. I will say that much. In fact, it's actually a film from my childhood, and I'm very excited um, to review this film for my 30th episode. If you guys can have told by the title or the thumbnail, or you guys could probably tell by the title or the thumbnail, I'm going to be doing a review on Hook, released on December 11th of 1991, directed by the fantastic Steven Spielberg, with a budget of $70 million. Domestically, it made 119, and worldwide, it made over 300 million. Um, Not many people can when they're talking about Steven Spielberg films. Most people don't really mention Hook, and if they do, they don't say it's a bad movie, but they consider it to be one of Steven Spielberg's lesser films. And um, I kind of, I kind of can see why. Um, but for me personally, it's one of my favorite films, uh, from my childhood, and um, I think I could see the problems with this film that most people have touched upon when people reviewed this movie. Uh, but I still love this movie. I can certainly see like I said, I can see the problems for what they are now. Um, but unlike The Hunt for Red October, that kind of, as I watch it more recently, it kind of does get worse and worse, but not only by a small midge. Um, because this film is still very awesome. Not as awesome as Hunt for October, but or not even like up to the standards of like Star Trek 2 or Jaws. Um, but it's still a very, very enjoyable movie. So shall we get on to that plot? So the plot for Hook is when his young children are abducted by his arch nemesis, Captain Hook, played by Dustin Hoffman. Middle-aged lawyer Peter Banning, played by Robin Williams, returns to his magical origins as Peter Pan. Peter must revisit a foggy past in which he abandoned Neverland for family life, leaving Tinkerbell, played by Julia Roberts, and the Lost Boys to fend for themselves. Given their bitterness towards Peter for growing up, and their allegiance to their new leader, Rufio, played by Dante Bosco, the old gang may not be happy to see him. Um, as I made it clear already, I love this movie. Um, and, I think um, it all has to do with the cast. I think honestly they do a very superb job, and, you know, uh, don't have. really any problems with the cast. I will mention some of the problems later on in the review, but the cast itself will is it's really good. So first up we have the late Robin Williams as Peter Pan, who um, by this point he would be switching off back and forth between like comedic roles and serious roles, and one of them, which I have actually right here, uh, which would came out 2 years before Hook, and that was Dead Poet Society. He plays a very serious role with some comedic touches in some parts of the movie. Um, will I be covering this movie filming this movie at some point? Uh, Absolutely. Probably near probably uh probably near like 70 or 80 episodes. I don't know. But I will be covering this movie at some point. Um, and I think Robin Williams does a superb job in this movie. It's unfortunate that um, um, you know, he committed suicide in 2015, um, and he was one of the best comedic actors of our time. So, um, you know, we'll all miss you, Robin Williams. We also have Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook. He plays this role like not exactly, but very similar to how Captain Hook was played in the Disney version from like 19 I don't know when, like 1960 or something like that. Um, but he plays it like that, and I think he's probably the best part about this movie because he plays everything so not serious that it's really really funny, and I think you know it's very very enjoyable. Um, we also have Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell. I think in this film she is unfortunately kind of miscast. Um, it just feels like really it's just you know um, like because in both the novel and in the Disney version, Tinkerbell is portrayed as kind of like a whiny bitch who wants who wants Peter Pan for himself, but kind of he falls in love with Wendy, so Tinkerbell tries to do everything to kind of kill and like kind of get Wendy out of the way so that she can have Peter for herself. Um, but in this film, she really just doesn't really have anyone to go up against, which, you know, I don't really know how to kind of feel about that, but um, it's just very kind of weird. Um, uh, but I from reports that I have heard and from from some um, reports I have heard from Steven Spielberg is um, that at the time of filming Hook, uh, apparently Julia Roberts was going through a mental disorder from an apparent breakup with her current boyfriend, which kind of does explain why she's barely in the movie. So like her first appearance is when she kind of takes Peter to Neverland, and then her meetup with Hook demand 3 days for Peter to train, and um, then she doesn't really pop up again until like at the end of the movie. So that kind of makes sense why she doesn't really appear in the movie, but in terms of her acting, she plays it very serious, and I don't really know why. Um, but I just feel like in this one they should have recast her to someone else. Um, but in in this film, she's just very kind of like very like I don't know how to describe it. It's just not really. It doesn't really suit Julia Roberts that much, and plus her characterization is very very bad. Um, we have Dante Bosco as Rufio. Um, he is very funny in this movie. As kind of like um, the new leader of the Lost Boys, and as slowly Peter becomes more and more Peter Pan, Rufio kind of gets more and more jealous that Peter is kind of taking over the spotlight from him. Um, but um, I think Dante really kind of gets a part of more internet kind of stuff now about Hook, because one of the things that I actually watched before I did this review was the channel Cinefix. They did an episode of Homemade Movies where they did the looky looky I got hooky scene, and they actually brought back Dante for to do that scene, which I think is very impressive, and that shows you that Dante would actually, if he has the time and he's available, he will do that for, you know, not probably anyone, but for a channel that like wants him to do it, he'll do it, and I think that's really commendable. Um, we have Charlie Korsma and Amanda Scott as both Jack and Maggie Brown Banning. Uh, if you guys may remember Charlie from an earlier episode, from if you go all the way back to episode 1, I reviewed a little movie called Dick Tracy, and Charlie plays the kid in this movie, and I think um, it's kind of funny that both Charlie and Dustin Hoffman came back to do Hook together, and um, I think it's very funny that uh, his performance actually got so good within a year. So it goes from this film being basically insufferable to in this film to be actually kind of to be able to handle the emotional scenes, and I think that he does it very well. Um, Maggie, uh, she's all right. Um, I think Steven Spielberg is the best with kid actors. With E.T. and like Poltergeist and stuff like that. He's very good with kids. Um, and um, but Maggie's just kind of okay. She wasn't bad. She wasn't great. She was just okay. Um, but Charlie certainly he plays a bigger part than Maggie in the story. Um, but it's very he plays it very well. Um, Maggie is very okay. Jack is very good in the movie. We have Maggie Smith as Wendy Darling, who is the older version. I wasn't able to find any information on who played like from kid Maggie all the way up to like adult kind of Maggie for the flashbacks, but um, Maggie Smith plays the Wendy who we see at the beginning and who plays the older version of Maggie in the flashbacks. Um, but um, she is um, she's like really good in the movie, and surprisingly, she's still alive. Granted, she's 85 years old, but she's still going and kicking. Um, it's unfortunate that we don't have both Robin Williams and the next actor that I'm going to be talking about, and the last one is Bob Hoskins as Smee, who I recognized him. Um, like when I once I figured out that it was Bob Hoskins playing Smee in this, I'm like, hey, that's Eddie Valiant from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but with a beard and not really a hat. Um, but I will be talking about this film later on. But I was like, hey, is that Ellie Valiant? And yeah, and unfortunately, he is also no longer with us. I couldn't find exactly what he died from. Um, but um, he did die around a year before Robin Williams did. Um, and it's ironic that this is my third attempt recording this video, and around this point in the last recording, my camera bugged out. So, like not around this time point, but when I was talking about both of them, my camera bugged out. Um, but it's really sad that um, we don't have that we unfortunately have lost both Robin Williams and Bob Hoskins, and we will miss both of them. So I would dedicate this movie to both um, Robin Williams and Bob Hoskins in not only this film but in subsequent reviews that I will do for both of them. Um, um, but yeah, we will miss both of you. Um, so might as well talk about the separate editions that have come out for Hook. So they did release Hook, I believe, around early, like right when DVDs first came out. I believe that's when Hook was released, because I did get a DVD of Hook a few years ago, and or actually around like 5-6 years ago, and um it was like from like 1999. Um, like the disc itself, like not the actual DVD release, because it did come in like a snapper case, but then it later did come in like a standard kind of like DVD case like this. That wasn't obviously Blu-ray, and then I'm not sure, but sometime later, around like 2010, they did come out with a Blu-ray edition that was, I believe, a DVD and Blu-ray combo pack, and then later released a standard Blu-ray edition, which is this version that I have right now, which is just the Blu-ray edition. Which, by the way, I love this card. It's basically like, I think this was the original teaser poster. Um, and I love this cover because it's like the original poster, basically. And I love the original poster art. Um, but yeah, this is basically like a kind of like just a standard, um, bare bones Blu-ray release from like 2015. But recently, whoever owns Hook now, I'm not really sure about that, did come out with a 4K release, which is surprisingly very hard to find. Um, to find like where like a store that might have it, or I mean online you probably could be able to find it, but most stores like don't even have it, which is very surprising. Um, but um, will I be picking up the 4K at some point? Most likely. Um, but I will be most likely keeping this Blu-ray as well, just for that cover art. Because honestly, the 4K is the cover's kind of bland. Um, but I'm gonna keep this just for that cover art, or maybe I'll just buy a poster. um, but uh, so the fun fact. So did you know that Michael Jackson was Spielberg's first choice for the lead? So yeah, when this film was around, I think 19 like 89, when this film first got into pre-production, they were intending this film to be a musical, and I surprisingly, Michael Jackson was supposed to be was Spielberg's first choice for adult Peter Pan, but Jackson did not agree with the idea of Hook being an adult, so he declined the picture. And then sometime later after that, they changed it from being a musical just to a standard kind of Peter Pan story. Um, and then by that point, both Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman were hired on, and the title was renamed from Peter Pan to Hook, which is actually why I really like this movie. It Most adaptations of the book, or like some kind of form of the Peter Pan story, would just call it like Peter Pan. Just think about it. The Disney version was called Peter Pan. The 2005 movie that came out after this was called Peter Pan. The 2016 film was called Pan, but it's kind of like the same. So we so far all the adaptations besides this were called Peter Pan. But having the title of Hook is very kind of singles itself out as being we're separate. We're telling a different story than what all of the other adaptations are doing. And I think that's very well done. Um, and um, it would be a crime to not talk about the composer, who is the fantastic John Williams, who did, classics like the Star Wars trilogy, the first Superman movie, um, and just so many other films later on in its career. And I believe by this point he started reusing a couple of cues, but still the score is fantastic. I believe it's still on La La Land Records for about, I think, $20 for the complete 2 CD set. Um, so if you love the score, you can go and pick it up at La La Land Records. Um, I think it's worth it, because I think this is probably one of the best scores that John Williams has ever did. Um, but that's just my opinion. If actually trying to listen to the score and if you want to pick it up, like I said, go to La La Land Records. I think they do still have it on their website. So go and check it out on there. And so yeah, so like I said about Hook, this film is another quintessential film from my childhood, and I really do appreciate it for that, but I do see it's kind of um, I do see some of its problems. Nevertheless, I'm gonna give this film a 8 out of 10. This is a fun family flick that I think everyone should watch at some point. Um, Maybe around Thanksgiving or something like that. Um, but uh, check it out whenever you want. Uh, Maybe go and try and hunt down the Blu-ray. Maybe not the 4K per se. Or buy it online, whatever. Um, but yeah, I honestly think you should check this out. So, I'm gonna be changing about the schedule for this week. So I know that in the Hunt for Red October video, I did say that the next review was gonna be Good Boys. Obviously, that's not gonna happen because I already did Hook. Um, but I'm actually gonna save Hook till the end of the week. Um, and I have one extra review that I'm gonna be doing. So stay tuned for tomorrow's video where I'm going to be doing my first animated movie, and it's not an anime movie that you might think. So stay tuned for tomorrow's video where I'm going to be doing the Disney classic that I don't think really a lot of people actually, I forgot to talk about favorite scenes. I shouldn't end it yet. Uh, so I'm gonna say my favorite scene is when the death of Rufio. I'm not the happiest person in saying that, but I think the death of Rufio kind of is like, so while Peter is fighting like the pirates, Rufio tries to battle Hook and has like a battle before he is unfortunately stabbed. And I think it's a quintessential scene in the movie that if it was cut, I would think it would have been a massive dishonor, because the last line that he says before he passes away is, "I wish I had a real dad like you," and that one makes Jack realize that maybe Hook isn't the nice guy that I made him out to be, but also it makes Peter want to kick Hook's ass and get him. Like, I'm like, yes, like like he's dead and you're standing in front of his killer. Kill him. And I think that's probably the best scene in the whole movie. Um, Sorry for that little kind of erupt kind of ending. But I totally forgot to do that. Um, but anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this review of Hook. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video where I'm going to be doing a Disney movie, anime movie that I don't think is talked about that much, and I think it should be talked about a lot more. So stay tuned for tomorrow's video where I'm going to be talking about The Great Mouse Detective, released in 1986. So, hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and stay tuned for tomorrow. I'm going to be talking about The Hunt for Red October. And have a nice day, everyone. Looky, looky, I got hooky.